Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary podcast. This is a special Tuesday mashup edition of our normal good, bad, and the ugly that we do on Tuesday, covering last week's game, which in this case is the Baltimore Ravens, and combined with a preview look ahead at our Cleveland Browns game, since that's on a Thursday night this week. I'm Leanne Lohman. I'm joined tonight by Dave Ribeiro, David Koreb, and Bob Quinn. Zach Franciscus, who is normally with us, will be here shortly. He had a prior engagement that's holding him up a little bit. Guys, how are you doing today? Any sudden mood swings since our show this same time yesterday?
No mood swings for me. I'm good.
Hey, my wife's in menopause. We need to watch the mood swing talk.
Save the mood swings for her. And she's married to you, so she probably knows trigger words like don't bring up Roderick Jones or Dan Moore or anything like that, or that'll set Bob off.
Yeah, she watches exactly a minute worth of the podcast every week, I think. So she just watches the intro that my daughter did.
Probably should over a minute before you made that
you
comment.
need to start building up her stamina, get through 2 minutes next week. Promise you won't be too disappointed. Well, if you're joining us tonight with the show, we really appreciate it. If you've been here before, you know we definitely want to hear from you. So please jump into the comment section, because we're going to start off tonight talking about our good, bad, and the ugly from the Ravens game, and take a look at some of those things that we thought went really well and some of the things that we thought were a little bit iffy, a little bit harder in a game like that where you feel like it's a good win. You know, it's sometimes a little bit harder to come up with the bad, but don't worry, we'll find a way to do it. So let's go ahead and start off with our good. Dave, do you want to go first?
Sure. There was plenty of good to go around. I mean, almost anybody on the defense would have been a good pick, but I took Peyton Wilson. I saw the tweet from PFF. He had a 92.5 PFF grade, 16.7 passer rating against him, and the interception, 2 tackles. This is the kind of linebacker they've been searching for since Shazier, right? A coverage guy. If he can fill this void and be that kind of player, this defense is going to be tough to deal with. And the biggest game of the season, he came up big. So, everyone could say Patrick Queen and Cam Hayward, but man, Peyton Wilson had an excellent game and was a factor, a big time factor. So my good is Peyton Wilson.
Keep going, David. You want to go next?
Absolutely. I went with the guy next to him, as you just mentioned, Patrick Queen. Look, had 10 total tackles, led the team in tackles, had a tackle for a loss, had a forced fumble recovery on his own forced fumble. I mean, the guy was all over. But the other thing that was awesome about Patrick Queen was kind of what you just said with Wilson, was this coverage skills. Did you see the videos of him covering Zay Flowers up the seam? I mean, he stayed toe-to-toe with him the whole way. And if it wasn't for that and what you were saying with Peyton, how good they did in coverage, that's why Jackson had such a hard time finding people open, was because our off-ball linebackers did a spectacular job of covering these guys up the seam, in the slot. I mean, they did a great job. And besides what you're going with Peyton Wilson, I'm going to go with Queen, just the fact he led the team in tackles. He was all over the place. And you knew this was a big game, a lot on him going into this. And sometimes guys either fold or they show up in that kind of pressure. And my man showed up. He really did. So that's why I went with him as the good.
We've talked about his improvement as the season has gone on, him slowly getting better from those early shows where we were a little bit worried about him to starting to see him really come out. And man, if he had to have a coming out party of sorts, what a perfect game to have it. Yes. Bob, what about you?
I almost went with our favorite Hall of Fame Nick Herbig, but it's got to be Chris Boswell. I mean, what? Boswell is just, 6 field goals, all of our scoring. Second time this year, I think I saw a stat. He's the only kicker in history to kick at least 6 field goals in 3 different games. And I mean, it's just amazing what he does. If everybody's familiar with who PFF is, but somehow, despite the fact Boz has only missed 1 field goal all year, and Brandon Aubrey has missed 3, PFF, in its infinite wisdom, has decided Brandon Aubrey is the best kicker in the NFL. I know he kicked a 65-yarder and Boz missed a 64-yarder, but give me Boz all day, every day. If there's a more clutch guy walking the planet who's a kicker, I don't know who he is. I saw somebody being funny saying, well, Aubrey's leg swing rate is much better than.
Oh, for Christ's sake!
Swing rate?
Yeah.
What?
He was kidding. He was kidding. He was trying to make fun of him. Yeah.
I almost said a lot of bad words just now.
I was going to say something like that, though, until you made the joke. I was going to say something like maybe it's like the force Boz's legs comes through with isn't as strong or some nonsense like that.
Yes.
Well, my good this week was the coaching, and I think there's a lot of good to go around. It's hard to ignore all the groups we have, but I just love how Mike Tomlin just seems to have Harbaugh's number in these games. And I think it causes him to get in his head. I think they make wacky decisions. We saw it last year against us. We saw it again this year against us. You know what I mean? And they make some, kind of confusing decisions. Like, why weren't they, they went out and got Derrick Henry, and how do you give him 13 touches or whatever it was in the whole day? It's just stuff like that doesn't make any sense. And I think that's a real credit to Mike Tomlin. I heard a quote from him where he said, the Ravens love to be bullies and we love to play bullies. And I thought that was like, so perfect.
Yeah,
I love that.
I like
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, it just sums up like that rivalry perfectly. So let's move in. We'll keep going around. Let's move into our bad phase. And David, start with you.
Yeah, my bad is Russell Wilson in the red zone. So, I wanted to credit Alan Saunders. He posted this on Twitter, and I thought this is something perfect that has to be brought up. And that's the fact that Russell Wilson and Fields have had 11 drives inside the opponent's 10-yard line. The difference, Wilson only has 4 TDs, 5 field goals, 3.9 points per drive, compared to Fields with 8 TDs, 1 field goal, 5.4 points per drive. Inside the 10, Fields is astronomically better, double. And the reason why, I think, is just the fact that Wilson forbids to run the ball. When he gets inside the 10, if there's any kind of lane or any opening, he doesn't run. I don't know if it's to protect the calf. I don't know what it is. But the man has got to run when he sees a lane and nobody's open. And especially with these wide receivers, like, you really better think about taking off with the ball if you have a chance, especially when the end zone's right there. He's just not doing it. But Fields did it all the time, and that's why half his touchdowns this season are from running because he does it inside the 10 a lot.
Yeah, and I see Big Papi talking about maybe on the rushing committee. And to your point, Justin Fields was an important part of the running game. I mean, he only carried the ball a couple of times, but they were big runs. I mean, if he doesn't slide, I mean, that first down would have been, arguably the play of the game from the offense.
The clincher. Yeah. Yep.
What about you?
Okay, so my bad. First of all, not a lot of bad in this game. Okay, we're kind of picking at nits here. Yeah. I have a feeling where Dave's going to go, so I'm going to go somewhere else. I thought the play calling was the bad here. Not so much because I think the scheme is flawed. I think Arthur Smith had a plan, but the Ravens did a good job making sure that you're not going. The plan you think you're going to have against our passing defense is not going to work, because we're going to make sure it doesn't work by playing deep. You're not going to get those moon balls. And I think you could see frustration on Arthur Smith a little bit, that he was wanting Russell to throw. Hey, now's the time for you to check down. Get that ball out of your hands. Let's go. Give it to Pickens, see if he can make a play. So, and I think they adjusted a little bit in the second half, but I think you've got to have a plan going forward. This is kind of 2 games in a row where they threw something at us we weren't expecting. The press coverage from the Commanders and the zone against the Ravens. And if we had used Fields against the Commanders, I think it would be even more effective. So I think you've even got to look to, let's keep our egos out of it. You're both on 1-year contracts. Let's put Fields out there when it's appropriate to try to loosen it up and get him out of that zone. You want to stand back and drop back and play zone, let Fields run 6, 7, 8 yards and bust the defense that way.
Our friend Relic is here to do all of our research needs for the show tonight.
Yeah, where were you in prep, buddy?
For my bad,
he gets dock pay.
I just said, where was Mike Williams? And look, I'm not one of those people that expected Mike Williams to be like our new offensive savior or this new incredible number 2 wide receiver. I recognize that last week when he came in, and the week before rather, and made that touchdown, that wasn't even necessarily on a play call meant for him. And so all of that, but I still expected to see him get involved somewhat, because I think one of the things that was confusing was to see Skoronski come in all the time, left it so that they automatically knew it was going to be a running play. He was coming in because he's such a good blocker. I think it was a little bit of a giveaway. And so, I don't know. I'd like to see more, mixing things up. We talked about this last night, some more, changes with that. Dave, what about you?
Well, my bad is the Justin Fields slide. Justin, bro, this is AFC North football. We don't slide with a game on the line. We go full bore. I mean, if he gets that first down, like Bob said earlier, the game's over. It's the play of the game. I don't know why we're doing the QB slide. A yard and a half away from the first down. He's got to get used to. He's got to get more on board with the AFC North type of football. It's physical. It's we don't slide. We dive for first downs. I know you're a quarterback, but still, this is the big time now. This isn't the Bears and Vikings in a meaningless Week 12 game. This is Steelers Ravens, Bertie. We need you to sell out for first downs. So that's my bad.
I felt bad. I felt like he thought he had it. It was so obvious. He jumped up and signaled, and
he did. He did signal like he had it, like he had done something. Hey, buddy.
Yeah. And he's a tough kid. I mean,
I'm not questioning his toughness at all. I just think it was a bad decision at the time. Yeah, he is a tough kid.
It was a boneheaded play, and I think Richard pointed out, he didn't like him because the fumbles coming in. He's the best player, and Dave, you made this point last night. He's our best offensive athlete. He just is. He's the fastest guy on offense. He's as big as Derrick Henry. Yeah, okay, maybe he'll fumble occasionally, but Jalen fumbles occasionally. We ain't keeping him off the field.
Yeah. And how many of those fumbles are blindside hits from being sacked? I don't think some of it is on him for sure. He does fumble too much, but I don't think we can take all those fumbles and just make a blanket statement.
Yeah. Let's move into the ugly. Bob, you want to start us off? You're not allowed to just arbitrarily say Dan Moore. You have to be more clear.
Just do it, Bob.
Yeah. You know what? No, but look, it's obvious, the ugly play. If you watched last night, Darnell Washington, I love you. I begged the Steelers for 3 rounds to pick you 2 years ago. I love what you're doing this year, becoming a part of passing the game. But hey, man, you're as big as anybody else who's ever played football. You got to jump. I understand there's some talk about, Tomlin didn't like Wilson throwing the ball there, and I heard Darnell thought maybe somebody was behind him. You're 7'9" and 500 pounds. There's nobody behind you. Jump up, catch the ball. We all celebrate. Woohoo! We win the game. But and that's picking it. I love Darnell Washington. I just not jumping, that little floater ball. I thought that was the ugly of the game. Didn't hurt us. Ultimately, Peyton Wilson made up for it, and we got the ball back and kicked another field.
Yeah. My ugly was Fields' slide and failing to pick up that first down. We're not going to belabor the point, so we'll just move on. Dave, what about you?
I know, Bob, you didn't want to do your pet peeve, but I want to do mine. These wide receivers, man, it's ugly. I think Dave brought it up yesterday. They had 3 total yards between the 4 of them. It's gotten to the point where it's almost comical. Do you know they've only had 100 yards combined twice this season? The whole group, not counting George Pickens, they've only gone over 100 yards twice. They need to scour practice squads. They need to figure something out. This is bad. This is going to cost them a playoff game. Being this, one-dimensional, run the ball, George Pickens only. I don't know if Mike Williams is that guy. We can hope he is. We'll find out. But for now, the ugly now and for the near future is the wide receiver 2 through 5.
Dave, that was my ugly too.
Sorry,
receiver core. It's okay because I'm gonna say some other stuff. So wide receivers 2 through 5, right? So let's go with Pickens first. Number 1 wide receiver, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 89 yards. The rest of them, Skoranek. 1 target, 1 reception, 4 yards. Jefferson, 1 target, 0 receptions, 0 yards. You think that you can't get worse than that, right? Calvin Austin III said, "Hold my fucking beer." He had 2 targets, 1 reception, -1 yards. Williams, he's on a milk carton. Nowhere. I nowhere to be seen. So wide receivers 2 through 5 were outdone by 2 tight ends and 2 running backs in receptions and yards. Not good.
Yeah. Hey, and just to point out, Richard, I saw him make a comment. Just because he's tall doesn't mean he can't jump high. When you're that tall, you don't have to jump high. Just jump. The guy who caught the ball behind him, I think, was 4'11".
I think effort would have gone a long way towards most of the fans feeling like something had happened. But regardless, Zach, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Do you want to do any? We just finished up. Everybody did their good, bad, and uglies. Do you want to do yours, or how you feeling?
I can just run through them really quick.
Yeah,
I don't have to get into it that much.
Give them to us. Hit us with them.
Yeah, good was the defense overall. Thought they stepped up wonderfully. The bad was our wide receivers, because I figured a lot of people would put them at ugly, because my ugly was the fact that we are still having the wrong people on the end of the right plays. It's too late in the season to have that happen as consistently as it's happening, where we're having good plays but the wrong people on the receiving end, whether it's a pitch to Najee instead of that, or the Calvin Austin on the sideline. It's too late in the season for things like that to happen. So those would be my 3.
Richard brings up Darnell Washington's knees, but that's kind of like a myth. Like, he doesn't really have bad knees. Somebody brought that up before, and I went and did a whole bunch of research about it, and he says he has no idea where that story came from. He's not had knee surgery. He was never out with a knee injury. So I don't really know where maybe just because he's a big guy, or he's a tall guy, or he's kind of a gawky guy that, he came up with the knee thing, but he actually doesn't have significant knee concerns. It wasn't noted on his combine profile or anything. Anyhow, let's move on and let's talk about start talking about the Browns for this coming week a little bit. I think this is an interesting game. The Steelers are at 8-2. The Browns are at 2-8. And, look, the Steelers struggle. We've talked about it before with those, so-called trap games. And, I think all of us are probably a little bit concerned that something like this turns into something like that. Tomlin has a history with Thursday nights on the road. The Steelers have a history with games in Cleveland away. Were 1-4-1. The win and the tie came from Ben. The other ones came from Mitch, Kenny, and Mason twice. The losses. So I think, there's some definite concerns. How are you guys feeling about those factors and how much they'll play in? It seems like it should be an easy game, but maybe it isn't. Zach, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, in a very weird way, this game is kind of as important as the Ravens game was, because we needed the Ravens game to show that we were contenders, and we need this game to know that we know how to handle inferior teams. I'm sorry to my dad, Wayne. I'm sorry. The Browns are an inferior football team to us. They have good players, they have good areas, but we should handle them. So if we struggle, then that'll make me wonder. So this game, I don't know whether to be concerned or not, but I know there's a lot of importance riding on
it. Keep going around, David. Do you want to?
Yeah. It does feel like a trap game for Tomlin. It really does. It's at Cleveland. We're going to have 3 days total before the game, after we had a physical game against the Ravens. They had the Saints, so they had a real physical game. They got their ass kicked, but besides that, also Jerry Jeudy for the Browns went off for them, 142 yards receiving on 6 receptions. It just has that feel to it. They've got a lot of injuries, so we'll see who ends up playing for them. But if most of those guys play for them, it does scare me a little bit.
Yeah, we're 1-7 against on Thursday night in road games under Tomlin. The only game they won was the Thanksgiving game where they beat the Colts, and it was, I think, the Colts' third-string quarterback. So is it a real concern? Yeah, but I mean, the Browns are just about as bad at this point as they could be. Jameis makes it interesting. He threw for over 300 yards, but they got destroyed by the Saints. I don't think their defense is as good. I think they'll be up for us for a half. We've got to match their intensity. This is a game where I do think if Russell is at all, if there's any truth to him struggling with his calf, that this is a game maybe you play Fields a little bit more in packages, especially if Myles Garrett starts beating Dan Moore and Broderick like a drum, then maybe you throw in some wrinkle stuff. But, overall, I feel like this is a game, if we're going to be a number one seed, if we're going to be a division winner, this is a game we have to win and we should win. And it's actually going to be pretty telling. If they come out flat and lose to a Browns team that can't beat anybody, although they covered against the Ravens a couple of weeks ago, but they still, ended up winning the game in a miracle with Jameis. I mean, if we can't beat them, I don't think we're a pretender, but maybe we have to pump the brakes on, going to the AFC Championship game and just concentrate on getting a playoff win.
Looks like the weather might be a little bit of a factor in Cleveland too. I think, that always plays into favor for the Steelers, but the Browns as well. You know what I mean? Pittsburgh and Cleveland are basically the same city and a similar weather belt. So it's looking like it's going to be right now like 39, 40 degrees with a mix of sleet and snow showers, some rain. So I think that factors in. Dave, what are your thoughts?
I hate this spot for the Steelers. Coming off your biggest win of the season, big physical game. And I got to turn around in 3 days and play the Browns on the road. Not so much the Browns in particular, but just a road game on a Thursday night after a big monster, emotional, physical win. The NFL doesn't do the Steelers any favors with the schedule at all this year. Again, I agree with Bob. This is a game they should win. They're a better football team. But, Jameis threw for 395 last week.
Yeah.
They've got some, they've got Nick Chubb. They've got some receivers. Are we giving the Browns too much credit? I don't know, but this is a tough spot. This is a really tough spot for the Steelers. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think it's an ugly game. Let's talk a little bit specifically about how we feel about that offense on that defense. On their defense. Is this the kind of game where you guys think Russ needs to show like a bounce back? Are we feeling that way about his performance against the Ravens, that this needs to be some kind of a bounce back game? David, you want to start us off?
Yeah, no, I'm not really worried about this. Look, they're 24th against rushing yards. So we got to run the ball. It fits what we like to do. We like to run the ball and then do the moon ball. So I don't think we need a bounce back game from him. We just need him not to make any mistakes, no turnovers. Kind of the usual shit that Tomlin wants to see, right? Tough defense, run the ball, no turnovers. This is that kind of game you want to have. It's an AFC North Division game. So I think there's no need for him to have a bounce back. Just don't make any mistakes. Hand the ball to Najee, Warren, and CPAT, of course. And, go that route. Win the game.
Yeah, I actually think he does need to have a little bit of a bounce back. I mean, there was, we're only 4 for 16 on third downs this against the Ravens. And I feel like, it's not that he's playing poorly. It's just there were some plays he kind of left on the field. And, I don't, Mr. Tummy, who's new to the chat, the Browns do play close games, but they're really not very good. This will probably be a close game. I know the Steelers are laying 3.5 in Cleveland. It's going to be. I still think Russ has to score a couple touchdowns here. Not him personally. You don't need to run the ball in, but the Steelers offense needs to score some touchdowns here, because if we go through and win this game 19-14 on 4 Boz field goals and a touchdown, you start to not feel great about the Eagles, the Chiefs, the next time against the Ravens. Because, I know we own the Ravens, but I mean, we're probably not. If Lamar is healthy, it's foolish to think we're going to win 18-16 again. We're going to need to score points.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
I heard Charlie Batch talking today on the radio, and he was saying that what he thought about the way Russ played in this last game wasn't so much that he played badly, but he felt like he needs to trust the defense. You've got to take some of those shots down the field that you know that you can make. And he said, he doesn't know why he was holding back a little bit, but that's how he felt, like he was holding back a little bit. And, whether it was from him or from Arthur Smith, but he needs to let loose a little bit and go ahead and take some of those shots and trust your defense. They bailed us out of that horrible red zone interception. So you got to take the shots that are available to you. Dave, what about you?
I think he's just got to be better in the red zone. I mean, we need touchdowns, not field goals. If he cleans that up, the rest of it will all fall into place. To piggyback on what Bob said, we can't win 18-16 every game. He looked hesitant in the red zone. He looked a little, and I know that the Ravens playing zone kind of confused them a little bit, but Russell Wilson's been in the league a long time. He's seen a lot of zone defense. That shouldn't have thrown him off that much. So clean up that red zone stuff, and we'll be fine.
Do you think this is the game, like Big Papi said, to open up the playbook down there, specifically in the red zone?
On 3 days, they're going to practice once, maybe twice. Yeah, I don't think this is the one you get too creative. I think you run the shit out of the ball.
I think you do get creative with number 2. But number 2.
I mean, that's actually
they don't do it with a week's preparation. They're not.
We're going to talk about
actually that's where I'm gonna. I truly believe the reason that I said this in the last podcast, that the reason they brought the Justin Fields package out is because they have been getting it ready. So it's not going to be on a 3 days prep. They rolled it out because they wanted to see, now that we believe it's ready, how's it going to do? And they got 2 significant gains despite a slide. So I think if this is the game, they're going to feel confident. It's not going to be a preparation thing. But for me in this particular game, I want to see them play like a contender should, and just all the things that we know are going to work. Defense play defense, rush running game, but let's get better at the things we know we're not good at. Let's score some red zone touchdowns, like you said. Let's not have those turnover. All the little things we need to get better at, let's do that and let everything else take its course. We should win this game going away, but I want to do that while a couple red zone touchdowns and saying, hey, look, we got better. Not just, hey, we beat the Browns.
Hey, and since Charlotte brought it up about the Eagles, Charlotte, I'm old. I'm 55. The Steelers have never beaten Philadelphia in my lifetime. We have not beaten them since the 60s in Philadelphia. So, yeah, I don't care what their record is.
Either. That's a talented football team. They're loaded with players.
That is ridiculous stat.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, I lived in. I hear about that shit all the time.
What just happened is the epitome of what this Browns week is, and while it feels dangerous, even though we're talking about the Browns, our minds it's the Eagles. It feels weird to come off what the Ravens week meant to us, what the win meant to us, what it all, and looking back on the film, that the defense looked better on the film afterward, and now the Browns, it feels like really easy to look past. Like, really,
I got a rant coming for the Browns. Don't you worry.
we talked about that in warm up before the show about this, this idea that if we lose this game, it's not like it's the end of the world for the Steelers. Do you know what I mean? Statistically speaking, this is not like keeping us out of the playoffs or costing us something huge. Do you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world, but it does. I agree. It does feel like a little bit of an overshadowing or foreshadowing to something not attractive. So let's kind of roll into that Justin Fields talk since Zach brought it up. Bob, do you think this is the week that they unleash more Justin Fields?
I think they have to. I think with a short week, it would be almost too much to expect that all of a sudden Russell Wilson can get right in the red zone. We kind of hope it happens. But when you get down with especially on a Thursday night game, short week, you get those opportunities in the red zone. We got to go with our best package inside the 10-yard line, and that's Fields. It's got to be okay. RPO with Najee or Jalen, and I am not afraid to let him throw the ball down there. It's okay. he is okay throwing the ball down there if they sell out and say, hey, no, we're not going to let you escape and run. Hey, no problem. Everybody run at me. Here, George, catch it. And let's hope he's learned some touch from watching Russell Wilson. I think Russell will have his opportunities in the red zone too. But yeah, I think if you run him out, I wouldn't run him out the first time. Second or third time in the red zone, yeah, I would run him out there because the first time they're thinking, oh, we just see Russell. It's just like it was. That first time, maybe they say, okay, this is what we prep for.
Going back to my Charlie Batch on the radio today, he said the question he got asked the most on his post-game show after the Ravens game was, does he think that they'll see a lot more of this Justin Fields package? And he brought up a point I really hadn't thought about all that much, which is that this isn't as easy as people think it is to just, bring a guy off the sideline, throw him in the game and tell him to run a 40-yard dash when he's been sitting in the cold for an hour and a half. And he said, it just isn't that easy. He said, so sure, there's ways for guys to stay warmed up. And he said, but for a quarterback, it's just not the same. He said, it's why you see, backup quarterbacks come in the cold, even though they throw a few times on the sideline and ride the bike or jog a little bit or whatever, and they got to get warmed up in the game for a minute, so they may run the ball. That first series might go 3 and out. He said, so he's, this isn't as easy as people think it is to just keep swapping him in and out. Dave, what do you think about Justin Fields? Is this the week to unleash him more?
Like I said earlier, I don't know with the short week. We know how conservative Mike Tomlin is. I think we're going to see less Justin Fields this week, and then maybe with the 10 days for the next game, we'll see more of him. You guys know I'm all for the Justin Fields thing. I've been pushing this for 3-4 weeks now. I think we should see more. Taysom Hill doesn't have any trouble getting warmed up and go out there and make an impact on the game. So it's definitely possible. It can be done. I love the red zone stuff. I wish they would use him in the red zone. Is Tomlin afraid that Russell Wilson might get his ego might get hit a little bit if they keep yanking him off the field down in the red zone? Well, that's something that you got to consider too. So yeah, I don't know if we'll see much this week.
Zach, you brought up how the Browns played against Taysom Hill.
This is, if there's a week to do it, it's the week against a team that proved that they simply can't stop it. And I like what Bob said, because I want, except for one thing, I want us to roll it out as early as possible, because you want to see how the Browns react to it. Because I love what they said. If they decide, oh, Justin's on the field, it's going to be a Justin, and they start crashing the first 2 times we do it, then it's an easy answer. Justin knows to start throwing it. So I don't think they have a way to stop everybody if we run it responsibly. And I truly believe we wouldn't have even tried it if we didn't believe it could be run responsibly, even just those 2 plays. So I if they don't pull it out en masse in this game, I really don't know until the next Browns game when there's a better time to pull it out.
Jack, I'm with you. I agree. I think that they definitely need to do it this game. This is the one to do it. Just in general, like if you're facing a team that's struggling against the run, you put in your running quarterback, they're going to have some issues. So yeah, I'm all for it. Work on it now. Get it established, get used to it, get the bugs figured out. So when you get down the road, you get to these games against the Eagles and the Chiefs and even the Ravens game, and you want to use more of it, it's not as much of a change of pace because you've been doing it a lot more going into these games. So absolutely, this is the game to do.
Yeah, and I think you have to focus on him not being a gadget player. Justin Fields is not a gadget guy.
Right.
He won four out of 6 games for us. So when we put him in, it's not Taysom Hill is a gadget guy. It's not like, oh yeah, well, he's going to do something tricky and weird. Justin Fields isn't that. You got to respect that he
Arthur
could stand
Smith
there.
flat said it today. We have 2 starting quarterbacks. He's not a gadget guy. He said it.
He did say it
during his interview today.
And we can't
I
get
don't know
to
if
the
Taysom Hill's
fancy
a gadget
quarterbacks
guy
in the backfield until we have Justin Fields there. So I want to get there where we have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields in the backfield at the same time.
They should do it. I'm all for it.
Why not?
I don't think Taysom Hill's a gadget guy, Bob. They have a set of plays for him where he's a wide receiver, he's a running back, he's a big part of their offense. It's not gadget. It's a planned part of their offense.
He won fantasy for me last week. So
well, I mean, when they line him up at quarterback, I mean, that's wildcat gadgety to me because he's not.
Call it whatever you want. It's effective.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
I'm not saying it's not effective. I'm just saying it's a gadget. You're not expecting him to catch it, take 3 steps and hit a receiver down the field. Whereas Justin Fields, hey, everybody comes crashing like it's an RPO, and he just sits up and I got one-on-one with George Pickens. Boom, catch it. He can do that.
Relic brings up, why don't we use Justin as a wide receiver? He would be down the field in 2 seconds. They did all say he was the fastest player on the team when he joined earlier this year. I think that brings up the question of who is this wide receiver this week? Is there a wide receiver that steps up this week that isn't named George Pickens? And, what do we think will happen in the wide receiver group this week? Do you think we'll see Mike Williams again? Do we think that somebody else will be a factor? I mean, do you think that we'll see other than somebody like Calvin Austin? What do you think, Dave?
Throw it to Skoranek.
Yeah. We're not throwing it to Skoranek. We know he's out there blocking. And
Skoranek's an offensive lineman. What are you talking about? He doesn't catch passes.
And that will be our version of someone stepping up. Our version of someone stepping up is just Skoranek blocking. That's it. That's it.
I mean, we've seen it before from Calvin Austin. He had a 55-yard touchdown. It was a touchdown against the Chargers.
Yeah.
He's capable, I guess, but he's the only hope. For me, I have no faith in Van Jefferson whatsoever.
Every blind squirrel finds a nut, and he's the size of a squirrel, so it makes sense.
Yeah, no.
I guess we're left to wait for Mike Williams to see if he can be the guy, because we've proven Van Jefferson's not the guy. We've proven Calvin Austin's not the guy. I mean,
are our tight ends valid guys? Like, would you?
Well, yeah, that's the thing now.
Them being used more often. Like, I was surprised to see Darnell used more than Pat. It felt like Darnell was eating Pat's lunch a little bit during that game.
Have we overvalued Pat Freiermuth? Have we overvalued him? Do we think he's better than he really is? Because
I don't know. That's a good point to raise, because
this is like year 4 of Pat Freiermuth's good. He's gonna have a breakout year. Pat Freiermuth's good. He's gonna have a breakout year, and we're still waiting for that breakout year that hasn't come.
The blame has been the quarterback, but then I guess he's not really getting the ball this year, so I don't.
And not only that, last game he took a significant step backwards in blocking that I saw. He got blown up a few times.
I saw that too, Zach.
He
Good point.
Couldn't stand up. I mean, it wasn't a footwork or it was a bigger man pushing Pat Freiermuth out of the way. Yep. So I think maybe he's losing some snaps because right now, as much as we want a tight end that can get out there and catch, Darnell Washington can do both.
Definitely not tolerating Pat slander. Well,
we touched the Hall of Fame Herbig news.
Yeah, I got some bad news for you. The more this goes, the more he's going to get.
Yeah. With this wide receiver, I think. Well, I think
Darnell's
with the fact that it's Pickens and a group of guys who are, like I said, consistently inconsistent. Any one of them could be the guy, but none of them are the guy. And that's what we. So I don't know who, but we need one of them. So among that weird amalgamation of wide receivers that we have, someone needs to step up besides George Pickens. And
here's
it's
the
a
thing.
magic 8 ball.
Here's the thing. I think we've underestimated how good hands that Washington has. Because that one pass by Russell Wilson was a horrible pass, and he made a really nice catch. And there's been a lot of those passes that have been a little erratic, and he's made really good catches and then went up the field because he can't bring him down. I've been saying, unleash this dude. And it seemed like this past game, down the seam, they started to do it. And I hope they continue to do it. And he's
slowly taking snaps away from Pat Freiermuth. He really is.
Thank you. I was just about to say, Dave.
To me, deservingly
he is
so.
being a better weapon than Freiermuth has. Yep. Because he can
block
right
now,
and catch and
there you go. There
you
go.
Oh, he's another world blocker compared to Pat Freiermuth.
Let me toss it out to Anna here on the Moose Slender. He is second on the team in targets. He's got 30, but the disparity is, he's got 41 less targets than George Pickens. The next guy is Austin with 33. Those are the only 3 guys who've been 30 targets.
That's right. That sounds right.
Darnell's caught 14 out of 19 passes. It seems like they throw him 1 or 2 a game. And could he do more? Yeah. And this is partly Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. We expected more out of Pat. There's not a lot of targets over the middle of the field. Though they're Pickens caught a couple.
Darnell got a good one last week.
And Darnell caught a. But there haven't been a lot of targets over the middle of the field.
That's a good point, Bob. They're not throwing tight ends up the seams at all. So that's one thing you got to consider when you kind of.
And it also could be if we see the wrong people being the targets of the right plays, then there's a chance that people who aren't supposed to be running over the middle we're not having the right skill set where we need to, and that might include route running. But again, I'm not an expert. I don't know, but that could.
I'll give you that undefined. It is a little bit the OC and the quarterback that has something to do with Pat Freiermuth's struggles. But you're starting to see, other players taking snaps from him. So we'll see.
Yeah, there you go.
As the weeks go on, if this continues,
we paid him.
He'll definitely be back next year. He's coming back for 4 more.
Right. Yeah. He'll be back this year. I think that this is
$44 million deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt he's going to be the tight end for the next couple of years. It's just, I think people think he's a Pro Bowl caliber tight end, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not there yet.
He is that.
To be honest, if you combine Najee and Jalen together, I mean, that's really option 2 in our passing game. They've got 39 catches, 49 targets between them, and Russell Wilson is known for the check down. I don't necessarily dislike that either as an option, because if you're sending everybody deep on go routes, the running back better be open on the check down. And
Jalen is great on check downs. There you go.
Yeah.
He is great on check downs.
So I think we need to talk a little bit about Myles Garrett, and we need to talk about the comments he made today regarding DPOY, but I think we also need to talk about how we think he's going to perform against our offensive line. So maybe we'll cover the DPOY topic first. I know Bob has a video clip of the comment he made we can watch.
Yeah, so anybody who hasn't seen it, this is what Myles Garrett in his infinite wisdom said.
I've never complained about the trophy not being in my house, and vice versa. You shouldn't be feeling 2 ways about it going to me. So we're just gonna play the game. I don't play against TJ. He doesn't play against me, but we'll have a plan to go out and do what we're supposed to, win the game, and dominate on defense. But it's up for grabs this year.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit. Thank you.
I love it. So good.
Yeah, let me just jump in here. Okay, Myles, you had 5 less sacks than TJ last year. PFF used an invented stat to get you the Defensive Player of the Year. You don't feel some kind of way that TJ was upset? Yeah, he played better than you. Of course he should be upset. It's absolutely ridiculous that you think you're some kind of entitled special player because Chris Collinsworth's organization is propping you up as something you're not. You're not half the player TJ is. I wouldn't put you on the Panthers and expect you to turn my team around.
Tell us how you really feel, Bob. Don't hold back.
Yeah.
I apologize. We should have gave a warning to turn the volume down.
Sorry about that.
Regardless of, I will say this, regardless of the personal feelings, everyone in Pittsburgh has personal feelings against this. When you look at it, and the reality of it is Myles Garrett is a real problem. He is a real problem against these edges. We can discount him, we can shrug him off, we can yell, we can do all we want. We do not have the blockers on the edge on their best day this year, which means more Jalen, more Darnell in there, less tight ends being able to go out. It hampers us, and so I'm legitimately concerned because I want to shrug it off. I say, oh, it's Myles Garrett. Oh, I really do, and then I remember that we're protecting a old veteran quarterback who. I understand he looked a little more nimble than I expect. I don't want him hit again. He was hit way too hard for my liking last week. He's not Ben. He's breakable. So, Myles Garrett, we need to respect the hell out of that. And I wish I had answers. So I hope. Do you guys know how to stop Myles Garrett? Because I don't.
Well, here's the thing. They traded away Darius Smith, so you can kind of focus a little more on Garrett now. So
great point.
That's what I look at. And here's the thing: Garrett's got 7 sacks on the season, and I had to look it up because I couldn't help myself. I wanted to see how many sacks TJ officially has because TJ, for his standards,
right?
For his standards, he's kind of having a down season in sacks, right?
Yes.
He still has one more than Garrett. In a down year, he still has 8, one more than Garrett. Like, the idea that this guy has ever been better than TJ Watt is just preposterous and ridiculous and idiotic. And there's so many mean words I could say, but I'm not going to. But also, he should traditionally be lined up across from Moore, who did struggle last week, but traditionally Moore does good against Garrett usually.
Well, against Garrett.
Right? I thought so.
Yeah.
I thought I was losing my mind a little bit. I was like, wait a second, Moore usually does well against him, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so I mean, I'm worried about him, but we can also chip Moore against him because we don't got to worry about Zadarius Smith. That's a big deal for us in that regard.
I think, I've always said, I think it makes sense that both things can be true, right? Like we can think TJ's better than Myles, and Myles Garrett is still a problem. It doesn't make him less of an issue. I know that Relic's in the comments, and he's not worried about Myles, and Myles has had games without any stats this season, but he is. And I think it's just like, we show up harder for the Ravens games. I think he shows up harder for these games. I think he plays these games with a chip on his shoulder. I mean, these two teams, Steelers and the Ravens, just like each other. They respect each other, but the Steelers and the Browns just hate each other. I don't even know that there's a whole lot of respect there. So I am worried how the offense stops them. Dave, what do you think?
Well, Myles Garrett had 2 sacks against us the last game we played in Cleveland last year, so you got to respect him. I think you double team him with Darnell Washington.
Cleveland.
Pure and simple. Put Darnell Washington right on the left tackle's hip and let them both go at it and neutralize him. Dave brought up a great point. Zadarius Smith's not there anymore to worry about, and hopefully that takes care of it. But yeah, you have to respect and have a plan for Myles Garrett. He's a game wrecker if you let him.
Oh, by the way, before we forget, let's not forget that we are facing our friend Devin Bush. He is the starting.
Is he really?
Football. Yes.
Yeah. I didn't even know that.
Yes.
I did not know that.
He is the.
Well, that all fits now. No wonder the Browns are so bad.
He is the starting.
It all comes together now.
Right now, it all makes sense. Let's switch sides and talk a little bit about our defense and how we feel like our defense will deal with Jameis Winston, how we'll handle Nick Chubb. I'm curious what you guys think about all of that. Bob, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'm worried about on defense is Jameis. Jameis, I mean, I'm not worried about Jerry Jeudy. I think Joey Porter could. I know he had a big game this past weekend, but the Saints secondary is not what the Saints secondary is. Their best part of their secondary is Washington. So I feel good about Joey Porter against Jerry Jeudy. I feel okay about Dante Jackson versus Tillman. I don't love the Njoku matchup, and Jameis he's gonna complete. He's gonna complete passes. He's gonna throw for 250 to 400 yards. Doesn't necessarily mean he'll win the game because he's as liable to throw it to the Steelers as he is to throw to the Browns. I think as long as we keep Chubb in check and he doesn't have his breakout game against us, there's a good chance we can hold this offense 7, maybe 20 points because it's Thursday night. And if that's the case, I mean, if we can keep them under 20, I feel like we can win this game by, scoring a couple touchdowns, kicking a couple of goals, and get out of there.
Dave, what about you?
I'm a little worried about Jameis Winston too. I mean, he's a wild card, an X factor. He, like Bob said, he could throw for 200, he could throw for 400 on you. I don't love Elijah Moore in the slot against our nickel corners either. That scares me a little bit. The only way that the Browns win this game is Jameis Winston gets super hot and just has one of his games. But I'm not overly worried about the Browns offense. I'm really not. I think the Steelers defense will handle them. We'll see. Nick Chubb's, just coming back from injury still. He's still trying to get his legs under him. This should be a comfortable game for the defense, but It's Thursday night, man. Anything can happen.
This is Chubb's first game back against the Steelers since his injury week 2 last year. And he said today in his interview that this is just another game. He's not worried about it. I thought, right. Yeah. No one believes that. Zach, what are you thinking about our defense against this offense?
I think the name we were just talking about is going to be the swing point. It's Nick Chubb, and that's a lot of pressure that Nick Chubb has. The mental pressure of being back in against the Steelers on primetime where that awful injury happened, and then the realization that the only way that this offense becomes dangerous at all is if he gets going. Because from what I saw, we have a very aggressive defense, and we have guys who really like to bite on things. And we were bit a little bit early last game by some play action, and that's only because we respected Derrick Henry early in the game. We had no reason to later on. If they get Chubb going early, it's the only thing that I believe starts making them dangerous. I think our defense wants to come out and prove how good they are by clamping down on this. And it all starts with Chubb. We shut Chubb down, we're fine. One-dimensional Browns aren't good.
Zach, I had no idea that there was a traitor among the midst of the Francis and I am so disappointed. But we'll be working we're working on Zach's dad's. We'll do the like a voodoo doll for him to keep him in shape for that night. David,
it's normally pretty civil, actually.
That's good because it would not be in my house. I know that's for sure.
For me, it's going to be which Jameis Winston shows up. He's like Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to which version of him we get. Is it going to be the guy who in 2 games, he had no interceptions, or the game where he had 3 interceptions? Is it the guy who's going to have a completion rating less than 55, or the guy that has a 65.2 completion rating like he did in this past game? It just depends on which one of him shows up. He threw 46 passes this past game. So are they going to let him unleash the ball? I mean, the Steelers are 18th defense against the pass. So I think they are. I think they're going to try to win it through the air. Chubb, like everybody said, the guy, I watched a Twitter account that's a Cleveland fan, and they were talking about how he has no burst. Chubb has no cuts, nothing. Like, he's just not the same. He just hasn't. I have him on my fantasy teams, and I can tell you that is correct because I have had 0 success with him in my starting lineup. So, yeah, I think if we just basically focus on stopping Winston through the air, I think we'll be okay. But it still worries me. You just don't know which one's going to show up.
I think that's fair enough. Guys, you have any other last-minute thoughts, concerns about the game, things you want to mention before we move on to score predictions?
As physical as the Ravens game was, I think the most important thing is the health that we walked out of there with. And that's all you can ask for in a short turnaround, because even if guys get banged up this week, we have a long week to rest. So they can throw a little more. If they have to put like 110% effort instead of 100%, they can do that knowing they have the time to recover. I feel a little better about that.
Yeah.
And apparently so is Courage.
A couple of different things I looked into I wanted to bring up tonight was the turnover ratio is one thing. We're second best in the league at +11. The Browns are 24th at -5 in turnover ratio. Another interesting tidbit, too, was takeaways and giveaways. As far as takeaways go, the Steelers defense has 11. They're 6th in the league, compared to the Browns' 2. So their defense does not get a lot of takeaways. And then as far as giveaways goes, our offense is 3, which is tied for second best in the league. And they have given up 8, which is 18th in the league. So the turnover thing is probably going to make a big difference in the game, and they're very bad in those things. Another weird one I looked up, too, was special teams. The average yards returned. Do you know we're the worst in the league in returned yards on kickoffs? We are 32nd, only average 22 yards on returning the ball on kickoffs. And the Browns are 31st with 22.5 yards. I didn't know.
So no kick returns this game. Has Patterson returned a kick yet? Isn't that why they signed him in the first place, to return kicks?
I haven't seen him do it.
He has, right? It's bizarre.
I have why he's out there. I'm sorry. He should not be the guy. As on punts, though, we are 12th at 11.4 yards per return, and they are 17th with 10.5 average return. So we're a little better in that department, but I couldn't believe we were the worst in league on return yards on kickoffs. I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. The Lions were number 1, by the way.
Excellent.
The Lions are number 1 in a lot of things.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's talk our score predictions. Bob, let's start with you. What do you got?
Bob, you're muted.
Bob is
Bob,
muted.
you're muted.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yes, we're good. There we go.
I didn't even hit the mute button. I don't know how that happened. All right. So if I think this will be close for a half. I think the Browns might even be leading at the half, and the offense may get off to a slow start. But ultimately, I feel like we're going to get a big takeaway. Maybe not score, but put us in position to score. I feel like we win this game 26-14, but it will be a late touchdown that kind of lengthens it out, and we can all breathe easy and go to bed just a little bit early.
Dave, what about you?
I'm going to go 23-10 Steelers. I think Boz gets another 3 field goals. I think the defense might even chip in with a touchdown in this game. Jameis Winston might hand us one, and the offense gets one. I think it's a comfortable win, even though we've been hemming and hawing how much we're worried about this game. I think it ends up being pretty comfortable in the end. 23-10 Steelers.
Zach, how about you?
I like that. I think we've all earned a boring game, and I don't remember a boring game in a while. So yeah, I'll say we're gonna win comfortably. We'll win 31-10, and I'm gonna even say it'll be 31-3 till the end and garbage time touchdown. So I say we are going. I'm going on based on what I want us to be.
I love that. I love the optimism. David, how about you?
Yeah, I'm scared. Don't have that much optimism. AFC North game, I'm scared. I think that the Steelers win, but it's going to be like 23-17.
We're all kind of right there in that neighborhood, except
for Zach.
My score prediction is I have 24-13 written down Steelers. I think that, you know, like a lot like Dave said, a couple of field goals, a touchdown. I'd love to see the defense do something. Relic dropped in his pick here. He says 17-12, unless the wide receivers ball out besides Pickens. If you watched the show before, you know we put our score predictions on Twitter and ask you guys to vote for who you think has the most likely odds of being closest. And then we talk about it on the next show. So look for that to come later tonight on Twitter. Give a vote to whichever person you think has the closest score. If you think we're all wrong, drop your score prediction in the comments. We definitely want to hear from you. If you've hung out with us so far this evening, we really appreciate it. We appreciate all the comments and the banter and the back and forth. It definitely makes the show more interesting. You can find the Steelers Sanctuary page on Twitter, as well as the Steelers Sanctuary podcast page on Twitter. Please like them both. You can find all of us on social media as well. So please follow us on social media. We definitely want to hear from you and hear what you have to say. So if you're watching the show after it's already aired, please still drop us comments, shoot us a message, let us know what you think. And hopefully we'll be back on Friday night Friday afternoon talking about the Steelers win. And we're planning on doing a follow-up to the game show Friday at 3 p.m. Correct?
3 p.m.
Yeah, a little earlier than normal. So
a little earlier than normal. Weird schedule this week with the Thursday night game. So
if you're at work, tell your boss to tune in with you, and both of you watch.
There we go.
On two different computers, but we get
two different computers for sure.
And we'll have legendary picks Friday night. Probably going to be like 8:15ish for the legendary picks, where the Coke Kings will let you know who's going to win this week.
Yeah, we'll let them know how it goes, Bob.
And make sure you enunciate there, because it sounded for a second like you said the Coke Kings, and I was very confused where the conversation had gone to. So
Zach was like, "Who? Where?"
That's why David was so hyper during the show.
What makes you think that isn't what we meant?
What is this, Grand Theft Auto, Vice City? Like, what are we doing here?
How do you think we're getting all these picks right?
Right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.